Numbers chapter 27, boys and girls. I gave you that piece of paper, so now your instructions are to flip it over to the blank side, obtain a writing utensil, and as usual, I will offer you a couple questions tonight. One of these. Yeah, that whole row needs one. All right, yeah, and I don't know if some of you guys are going to write in your books tonight. I know not everybody has a book, but now you got a blank piece of paper that you can write the word numbers on it with the number 27 next to it. What? That's all right. And then after the 7, leave a space and write the word transition. Transitions. So we were singing songs just now, and the one line was, "My chains are gone." But right before that, we sang, "You rescued me." And it's great to sing that song, but I was stuck asking the question, what if there's no D? Meaning, you're not singing, "God rescued me." You're singing or screaming, "God rescue me," because you're still in the middle of it, you're still praying, and you're still looking for an answer. That's where I was trying to sing that a few minutes ago. So the conversation tonight, or the message, is the question about when you're in the middle of a transition. So I don't want to give you examples, and I told myself this multiple times. Don't offer you examples, but I want you to scribble down a type of transition that you might be in right now. It could be today, it could be this summer, this month, this week, this weekend. There's all kinds of different transitions. And some of them we worry about, and I'm going to get to this in a little bit. Some of them we don't worry about much at all. Some are big, some are little. Some are somewhat seamless, fairly easy. And some of them obviously can absolutely rock you. And when you're ready, flip or open or scroll to Numbers chapter 27, please. All right, we there? So last week, let's review. Last week, Walt talked about Moses for a portion of it. You mentioned that there was some sin, and Moses was not allowed to enter the Promised Land. And when Walt mentioned that, it got me stewing on it because I knew I wanted to bring that up tonight. There's some context to Moses. Moses was the man, right? Leader extraordinaire. He rescued the people. He led them. He led them. He led them. And then this one moment of anger and sin, he strikes the rock. I think he struck it twice. And that precluded him from going into the Promised Land. You follow? It was, to me, I'm reading this because I went back and read it, and it's at the end of, so chapter 27 is 2 halves, 2 stories, 2 paragraphs, essentially. The second one, Joshua to succeed Moses. And so I was thinking about this thing about Moses, and this question of like, what am I thinking right now? What are you thinking about Moses? Because, so he had a moment of anger. He got ticked off. The people frustrated him. In his anger, he hits the rock. That's the moment. That's the decision. That's the act. That's the mistake that kept him, after all these years of leading, that kept him from entering in the Promised Land. So my realization, I guess, is when we make a mistake, when Moses made a mistake, sure, sin can be forgiven. But it doesn't mean that the consequences aren't real. And in that moment, he knew and he was told, and now he's doing the Joshua baton passing. And his one concern was that Joshua would be a good leader. It's an interesting realization that he didn't get to go. And the reason I bring this up is because Moses was a leader. Moses was, think of a college president, or the president for that matter, of the United States, or think of a pastor. When a pastor's about to retire, have you ever heard this phrase? I know you have, Methodist man. Pastor emeritus, right? Yes? Come on, man. When a president of a college is about to be done, or maybe he's getting a little bit of promotion, but he's kind of getting ready to retire, he's called like a chancellor, and you're kind of moving him towards this little status of like, you're still a man, but we're moving on to new leadership. Anyway, it's this idea that's why I put the gold watch in there. Like, what kind of respect are we giving Moses? Why didn't Moses get land? Because that's the topic of our chapter. Why didn't he get land in the promised land? Why wasn't he given that gift? Why wasn't he recognized as being a leader? Why wasn't he given a better retirement ceremony? Why wasn't he given a gold watch? That's like the thing when you give a guy when he retires after a lot of years of leadership. I don't know, but that's the ending of where we're at. And the interesting thing is the guy that's mentioned here falls in the same category or age bracket or generation as Moses. So anyway, chapter 27, how about somebody read verse 1 to 7 for us, please?
Then drew near the daughters of Zelophehad, the son of Hephar, son of Gilead, son of Hephar, son of Manasseh, from the clans of Manasseh, the son of Joseph. The names of his daughters were Mahlah, Noah, Hoglah, Milcah, and Tirzah. And they stood before Moses and before Eleazar, the priests, and before the chiefs and all the congregation at the entrance of the tent of meeting, saying, Our father died in the wilderness. He was not among the company of those who gathered themselves together against the Lord in the company of Korah, but died for his own sin, and he had no sons. Why should the name of our father be taken away from his clan, because he had no son? Give to us a possession among our father's brothers. Moses brought their case before the Lord, and the Lord said to Moses, The daughters of Zelophehad are right. You shall give them possession of an inheritance among their father's brothers, and transfer the inheritance of their father to them.
Thank you. All right. I don't know if you read this week. I don't know if you got into this, and I know I'm zeroing in on this one little story, this one little character, and here it is, 7 verses. That's where we're going to be tonight. So Zelophehad. He's only mentioned 3 times in Scripture. We're going to look at this one, Numbers 36, and then the last one is in Joshua. That's it. It's the only time the guy's mentioned. And the only thing I can find on him was he's from the same generation as Moses, meaning he was in slavery in Egypt, so he made the exit with him through the plagues and all that stuff. He's leaving with Moses. They're in the same, I don't know about the exact same age category, but the exact thing from the scholars were he was in the same generation. So he understands this, which also means the daughters here that are mentioned probably were not born there. They were probably born in the wilderness during the Exodus, during this transition, because now they're about to exit, and it's the same, meaning he is also on his way out, I guess, so to speak. And the fact that they're asking, this is the $1 million question. I don't know if you guys caught it. Give to us a possession among our brothers in verse 4. Why should the name of our father be taken away? Zelophehad is dying or died, and they have no brothers, and there's no mom mentioned, okay? So that's the context to this cat, Zelophehad. And it kind of got me wondering, okay, what does this look like? No mom, no wife, whatever mentioned. No concubine. Don't know if these 5 all belong to the same mom or not. And it's these 5 girls, 5 sisters, no more dad. So what is it like to have 5 daughters? So then I Googled, Zelophehad had 5 daughters, and this is the picture that came up on Google. And it said that guy's in the National Guard, and he has 5 daughters, and so that's the picture that he took with him. And I was thinking, well, that's interesting because I only have 2 daughters, but we just had Father's Day. Like, I can kind of relate, but 5 daughters is a whole different ballgame. And then if you go on Amazon, this is the next thing that comes up on Google. If you can own that t-shirt, and I don't know who would want to own that t-shirt, loud and proud, $5. But anyway, that's all that comes up. So go to the next slide, please. And these are the 5 daughters that are named, okay? Good job, Kristen, on trying to pronounce their names. So these are the 5. And again, trying to find out the context, trying to find out who these people are and why does this story matter, why was it recorded. I looked up the names, these 5 names and their meanings. Okay? So sometimes we talk about how each of our names means a lot, or what is your name. So here they are. The first one, Mala or Mala. It means sick. It means a feeble person. And I was thinking, I would never think to call somebody that when they're born, but I also wonder what that looked like in that time. When they're traveling and did that baby have a hardship during birth or something? They're in the wilderness when she was born. This is interesting, okay? Feeble person or sick. Second one, Noah. Different Hebrew word for the female noun Noah than the male noun. Does anybody, a little quiz, does anybody remember what Noah means, the male Noah, the one we know in Genesis? You should know that because it's powerful. The word Noah, and of all the tumultuous story of Noah, right? I always think Katrina, but anyway, the earth is flooded and everything is tumultuous and crazy. And you guys drove through water today. Like people are telling stories about driving through water today. Like it's crazy. There's all kinds of disruption, right, to our lives when a flood happens. The word Noah means rest. The person that God chose to lead and save humanity through all that was rest. The female word Noah is the exact opposite. It means motion. It means to be tossed about. In fact, the root word of it means movement. So that's the female, I don't know why, but that's the female noun of Noah in Hebrew, motion and tossed about. Hagla, the third daughter, means partridge. It's a bird, right? Did she take flight, over the other ones, or did she, I don't know. Why? Okay. Yeah, exactly. That's the only thing I can think of. Milcah. Milcah means queen. And the last one, Tirzah. Tirzah means favorable and delightful. It's an interesting thing to call somebody, all these are interesting, obviously, meanings, but I found myself asking, man, wonder what people think when they speak to you, when they speak to me. I wish that I was looked at as somebody that was favorable. I wondered that too. They get better, exactly. Bird queen and favorable is a pretty good ending. The beginning, not so much. Yeah. Anyway, so interesting 5 names. But then what's actually said about them? So remember, there's no mother or wife mentioned. And what is it about 5 single women and going into the promised land? If they're not married and there's no dad to take care of them, then they're left, it's the context of what we know about women in Scripture, that it left them like poor and destitute, right? No one to take care, no possessions, and then no land. That was the big thing. And they're making this huge transition. They're getting ready to cross in the promised land, no inheritance, no land to take care and to provide for them. So the interesting thing is they make this request in verse 4, why should we go in there without any inheritance? Give to us a possession. They were concerned about the future. Okay, what you have written on all your papers, the word transition, and then whatever chapter you're in life right now, whatever chapter is about to close and whatever new one is about to begin, there's concern because there's unknown. Fair? Whatever thing you wrote down, whatever you're about to stop and then the new one is about to start, there's some kind of concern about what the future holds. That's all there is to it. I was thinking about this whole thing. It's easy sometimes to say we have an advantage. We know the whole story. I think in this case we're at a disadvantage because we can't, in a sense, put ourselves in that position in the middle of the chapter because we already know what the end holds and we already know what the end of the book holds. Instead, right now, whatever you've written down on your paper, wherever you're at in life, you don't know, but you know what the last one did. I thought of one example. All you guys, all students, all of you guys, we're halfway through summer, sorry to tell you that. In August, you're going to have new teachers, or new teacher, or new class, or whatever. Well, you have some unknowns about the new school year coming. You knew what last year was. You knew what last August was when there was unknowns, but you made it through and you got new teachers, you got used to your your routine, and it's going to happen again. And guess what? It's going to happen again after that. But there's unknown right now, but you've already been there once before. You tracking with me? When you're in the middle of the chapter and you haven't gotten to the end yet, you just don't know. These ladies, ladies, they were concerned about the future. On the other hand, they were asking a question with confidence about the promised land. And this is what I mean by this. Have you gone to a place before that was familiar to you and you were driving there and you knew what the place looked like as your destination? Like, I guess anytime we're driving home, anytime you're driving to your own house, you know what the streets look like, you know what the houses look like, you know the neighbors, you know this, you know that, you know what cars should be where, you know where you're going. That's one thing. What about when you drive somewhere with another person, ride somewhere with another person, you haven't been there, but they have. And they're one of those like, oh, it's just right up here. Oh, another mile or 5 more minutes or just around this corner or whatever. You get what I'm saying? There's one person who knows, is familiar, whatever, and the other person is unknown. Okay, take it a step further. What about when both people in the car or the hike or whatever have never been there before? What is that like? There's a lot of questions. There's a lot of double checking your map. There's a lot of looking at the directions, making sure you know. There's looking, you're very aware of where you are because there's zero familiarity. There's a lot of concerns, a lot of questions. There were some scholars writing about this who said these girls, ladies, their faith is shown by the fact they were laying claim to what was already promised them in the future. In other words, they had a confidence that God had spoken through Moses that this was coming, and that's powerful. We don't think it so much. Again, we already know the end of the story. But if you're in the middle of your chapter right now, of your transition, of whatever chapter in life you are, it is powerful to know because there's been a description or a picture painted or a vision painted that God's already been there. He's already got it paved. He already knows because He's already there. It's tough when you haven't been there yet and you've still got questions and concerns. Real quick, I said it was mentioned in 36. Flip there with me. Numbers 36. It's actually the very last chapter of the book. The title of this, and maybe your paragraph, chapter 36, has the same one. It says, Marriage of Female Heirs. Female in the females who are inheriting. That's an interesting title when you think about the fact that this hadn't happened before. The Lord, in verse 2, the Lord commanded my Lord to give the land for the inheritance, blah, 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 Zelophehad, blah, blah, the daughters. Verse 3, but if they're married, this is the question. If God said this, if these were God's instructions, verse 3, but if they're married to any of the sons of the other tribes, their inheritance will be taken and added to the inheritance of the tribe into which they marry. So it will be taken from our lot and added to their inheritance. You get it? It's kind of a confusing sentence. Do you know what their concern is? Basically double dipping. It's ironic. Sean and I watched a movie this week, and it was this girl, and her parents were farmers, and they had a farm. The parents died. She inherited the farm. Across the street, there was this boy. The boy's parents were farmers. The boy's parents died. He had a farm. Well, they were about to get together. There was a problem. Do you want to keep your farm, or do you want to keep your farm? Are you going to sell your farm, or am I going to sell my farm? Are we going to move across the street or stay over here? There was all this question about what do we do with two different farms? That's their question. They're saying, the critics are looking at this situation and asking the question, if you inherit from yours, but then you get married later and you have an inheritance, now you both have an inheritance, and you've almost stolen from another tribe. There was concern about their situation. Okay, let me make a jump here to us. Sometimes we're really concerned about our chapter and our transition in life and where we're at. That's one thing to be worried about. Sometimes I think we're really, really concerned and questioning other people's situations, and we're pointing the finger and we're asking questions about their deal and their double dipping and how are they going to make out with this whole thing and how are they going to end up and da-da-da-da-da. And I only say that because I see it every single day at work. We're asking, well, how does he get to do this? Or why does he get to be on the phone all day at work? And why? They're concerned about double dipping and how is the other person going to end up in a better situation than me? That's the question. So I guess on your paper, I'm kind of asking, man, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, physically, where are you at? Do you worry sometimes about other people's situation more than your own? And asking the question and worrying and judging what they're going through.
Because read the parable of Jesus about the, I don't remember which one it was, but it was the one where they hired the workers.
Yeah.
And he had to hire them.
Yeah.
Everybody's concerned about how to pay it.
Everybody's concerned about what they're getting paid. Yeah. Is that any business of yours? No. Shut up and go to work. So back to the girls. This is interesting. Back in chapter 27, Moses brought the case before the Lord. Verse 5. Verse 6. The Lord said to Moses, the daughters of Zelophehad are right. Bam. End of story. That's a powerful description of someone's words. You could say someone's complaint. Some people read this and they say those girls were selfish. They were out for themselves. They're only worried about themselves. They're only complaining and going to ask for themselves. That's not what I read. That's not what a lot of commentaries and rabbis think about this. That's not what they say. Instead, God agreed with them and spoke up and said what they said was right. That's his decision. And then what? Moses, give them land. Boom, give them land. Cause and effect. Here's your instructions. Here's my decision. Here's your instructions. That's powerful. They speak what is right is a different translation than what they have said is right. The word right at the end of that means honest, correct, and just. I don't know about you. I have a lot of prayers for my kids, that they would be wonderful people, they'd be compassionate, that they'd be joyful, they'd be generous, all those kinds of things. But you also know what the main thing is? God, I pray that they would be honest and just in life and not be liars and cheats. That's the best thing you can pray for, your name and your integrity. I think for God to say that about them, that's huge. He's not calling them selfish, and that the easy thing that we could have said, judging them about these girls. So, that's the deal. That's what I noticed. That's chapter 27 and 36. Let's turn the corner to 2021. The next screen says this word, precedence. So, one thing about this was called human legislation. It's one of those situations where something has never happened before. What are we going to do about it? The case is brought to God through Moses, and there's a decision, a legislation based on human rights, human legislation. The second thing it was said about that is unprecedented times. So it begs the question, what do you do during unprecedented times? We've heard that word this year, last year. These are unprecedented times. That's all we heard about COVID, right? So I looked up Simon Sinek. Y'all know Simon Sinek? He was famous in TED Talks, and he's got a great book or a couple great books. Dude's very impressive speaker and thinker, actually. So I'm watching this video on YouTube of Simon Sinek, and he says, these are unprecedented times. The $1 million question is, what do you do during unprecedented times? So COVID rocked a lot of people's worlds, but let's go way back before that. Uber. So I go to the airport last week, and I'm picking up Brett, and there's a line of like 20, 30 taxis just sitting in line. Some of them, like most of them, the engines were off, and they're just sitting there. And I'm watching them, they're not moving. I was a little bit early, Brett was a little bit late, whatever. I'm watching these taxis not moving, and I'm thinking to myself, I don't get it. If you're not moving, if you don't have a passenger, you're not making money. I don't understand why these guys are still sitting there, because somebody had the genius idea, let's put an app on your phone, so as soon as you land and power your phone back up, you order your ride, and it's there sitting at the door for you, right? Like Uber, genius. So what do you do as a taxi driver when Uber is going to replace basically your whole business? That's what the video started off with. And so then I thought of when we were kids, and I know I'm a different age kid than y'all were age kids, but when I was a kid, Friday night, this was a big treat. To go down the street to Kroger and rent a VHS movie. That was a big deal. I think we went to the same ones. Kroger on Thompson Road, right? It was great. It was a treat. And by the way, if you didn't have a VHS player, you could rent that too. Well, then a really big deal happened. Across the street from Kroger, a Blockbuster showed up. Yep. No more VHS. Do you guys know what VHS stands for? Yeah. That it even existed? Okay. Well, after that, there was something called a DVD, okay? And then, so Blockbuster was rocking and Family Video was on the other corner. So DVD turned into Blu-ray, and then what happened? Shut down and gone, right? Things closed up. Okay, so streaming obviously took the place of that. So the whole point of all those examples, okay, the whole point of Simon Sinek's video is, what are you going to be in the future? Because when something throws a curveball at your business or your line of work or whatever, what are you going to do? Are you willing to change? Or are you going to be stuck in the mud, basically? Are you all about survival mode? Or are you asking the question, what could I be in the future? And his point was, I didn't realize this at the time, but what I figured out about his video, the video had all these people on the screen. It was all employees of his company. And he's on this rant, and it was beautiful. He was like, I'm asking you the question, are you going to have a job in the future? And his point was, you can be employed here, but you might not have the same job. As in, you might have to switch hats or switch roles. The question is, are you willing to change? Because otherwise, you might not have a job. You might not be employed here. It was a great video. And it wasn't that long, and I was going to play it tonight, but anyway, kind of got off in the weeds. My question is, the things that you wrote on your paper, maybe you haven't written enough. Maybe there's more transitions and chapters you're realizing that you're in the middle of. Is, are you willing to be flexible and change and be creative? I think we've had a lot of those conversations here at the gathering. It's impressive to think that this had never happened before, and these ladies were bold and faithful, and they weren't selfish, but they were confident, not only in themselves, but also in God's plan for the future. I can remember that office right there when Ron Koval started the counseling ministry here. Dude was super qualified, tons of wisdom and experience. And then he said 2 terrible words: I'm retiring. And I was terrified. Erica was here, super qualified, great resume, took over, seamless, great. But when you don't know and there's still unknown questions, it's still crazy. I know a lot of you weren't maybe here for that, but across the hall, Jenny, a year ago, right, said, okay, I'm done, I'm hanging it up. Like it's a bad place to be. When she resigned from leading that. She had led the daycare since its inception, since it started. It's hard to get used to something. I'm terrified of the day that you want to hang up your chef's coat at Camp Hope, among other hats that you wear. So do you guys get what I'm saying? There are transitions and chapters in life that might freak you out. So the next picture kind of explains the whole shebang. There we go. This explains it all. You ready? So about a week ago, I went to get some peanut butter out of the cabinet, and the one on the left is what I found. What do you notice about the one on the left? It's very close to empty, just a few precious scrapings left. What do you notice about the one in the middle? It's full. There's a lot of pleasures in life. One of them is taking the foil off of peanut butter and looking at that beautiful surface on the inside, right? Oh, it's wonderful. What are just the 2 on the left, the one on the left and one in the middle, describe them. How are they similar? They are peanut butter. That's exactly right. They are peanut butter. Ron and Erica were both counselors, okay? Good answer. It's a great answer. You have to ask yourself, how are they similar first? What else are they similar? Same brand. Very good. Same brand. So you're probably going to get the same taste in those 2 because they're the same brand. What else?
Creamy.
The same style? Yeah. They're both creamy. Exactly. They're both creamy and the same grams of protein and same color label. What else? Same color lid. Yeah, they're both going to taste good. Okay, real quick, how are they different? One's taller, exactly. One's empty, one's full, yeah. Right here it says 40 ounces, and right there it says 48 ounces. So like really close, but they're not exactly the same. So Ron and Erica, both licensed counselors, both tons of experience, both had supervisory privileges. Just a little different, right? Male, female, a little bit older, a little bit younger. West Coast mindset, Midwest mindset, a little bit different, okay? What about the jar on the right? A little smaller, what'd you say? Why do you say that?
That is
I got that jar out of a trash can, man. Huh? Nothing less. So it's smaller, exactly. How else is it different? The cap is a different color, right? The appearance. Oh my gosh, we got red and we got brown. Different colors, right? Obvious. How?
Because it said it's natural.
It's natural.
Supposedly it's trying to say that, hey, this is more healthier.
It's a little healthier. However, anybody that's ever opened a new jar of natural, what greets you on the top? Oil. A big old thing of Earl right on the top. Right. Oil. Clear, but it makes you question it because we've looked it up. We've looked up the oil, because there's healthy oil and there's junky oil. Most peanut butter is made with really cheap oil. It's not good for you. Then there's the sugars and all that stuff. Okay, so there's the oil on top. And yes, the same brand, still creamy, still the same style, but not the same style at the same time, right? It does not taste as good. It's not the same. You look at that oil on the top and you're like, oh, am I supposed to pour it out? Am I supposed to stir it up? Am I supposed to leave it? Am I supposed to put it on my bread? Oh my gosh, kind of freak out moment. That's all I think about. So, if you've ever asked the question though of what type of peanut butter should you buy and what style you should buy and brand and natural and creamy and crunchy and blah, 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 blah. And if you've ever made your own, crushed up the peanuts and put some salt in it and call it a day, then you kind of jump through some hoops and ask these questions. And I throw that example up there because if you go to a store, especially a bigger store, there's 100 options, almost 100 options of peanut butter, but you're still going for the same thing. I don't know what you've written on your paper, but a lot of times I think we kind of freak out when we don't go from one thing to the next and it's seamless. The one on the left, the jar on the left and the one in the middle was pretty seamless. They're almost identical. I wouldn't ask any questions. I would just get the cap off and jump right in. The one, I wouldn't literally jump right in, sorry. Although that is, you don't want to jump into that Earl. The jar on the right, a little bit different. And if you get one of those off brands or you get one of those refrigerated brands, this is not shelf stable. I mean, things kind of go crazy and smoke starts coming out your ears. But my point is on your paper and the chapter that you're in, if you start freaking out a little bit because life doesn't make sense or the ingredients aren't all there or the transition just doesn't seem as smooth as you were expecting, then you start asking questions and there's some freak out moments. People were asking questions about these ladies in Scripture. Well, how's it going to work? How's the inheritance going to work? Even if God gave his instructions for now, the most important word in that, in Numbers 36, whatever verse it was the word but. Because he's referencing God's instructions. They said, okay, God instructed you to give the inheritance, period. But it's because humans, we have questions. God gave his instructions. Why can't that be enough? I don't know, because we have questions, we have curiosities, we have concerns. That's what word I used in there. They had concerns about the future and they had concerns about those ladies and their inheritance. I don't know how severe of a transition or how significant of a transition you wrote on your paper. I've seen all kinds of U-Haul moving vans, I feel like right now, this summer. There's one on our street today. Our sister was driving from Indiana to Florida. That's a big transition in a big moving van. That's a big transition. Whole new chapter in life, one closing, a new one beginning. Your bosses, your spouses, and we talked about somebody that they had a spouse die and they got remarried this year. That is a big transition. I talked to a guy today, he wrecked his car, he got rear-ended. He's got to get a new car in 2 days. That's a transition. That's when one thing closes and it disrupts your schedule, especially if it wasn't planned, and you have to open a new chapter of your life or a new loan or whatever the case is. Those are transitions. Next picture, last picture. Does that look familiar? Most people in this room have been there. Large oak tree at Camp Hope. there was on the other side of that trunk, there was a huge bee infestation one time. And Dave Young came and like took care of it and all that kind of stuff. And then this lady came to visit one time. She was real bubbly and she was talking to Walt Malou and I was there and she said, oh yeah, I used to work here and teach here. We're like, oh really? And she looked out the window. She wanted to know if the oak tree was still there. And we said something about it and she said, oh yeah, there's bees in the trees at St. Louis. That was her phrase. Like she sang this little ditty. That was her thing. Well, that's like a well-known tree or whatever, and it's a big, strong tree, and it's incredible. It's a good tree. Every once in a while, you can see right here, Don and Matt, I think that is, these branches would hit them in the head, right, if they walked into them. And so every once in a while, I'm looking around there and I think, man, we need to clip some of these lower hanging branches. And then whoever's going to mow, it'll just be a little bit easier to mow. And grass doesn't really grow underneath it. We need to trim the branches. And that way it won't be as muddy and the sun can get to it and all that kind of stuff. And we've taken out, like Alex's big trailer, we've taken out more than one load of branches from this thing. So one time, I go over there and we use the big pole saw one time and we're getting stuff away from the building on the left because it's getting green and mildewy. You guys know this. That's what happens. And another time though, we couldn't reach everything. So we get the big ladder out, it's the extension ladder, and we lean this big old ladder up against the branch. And so I reach out, I didn't cut the branch that I was on, okay, so spoiler, all right. But I reach out there with the saw and I cut this big old thing off and the whole branch, if this is the ladder and this is the branch goes like this. Like it raised probably 3 inches. And this big, limb, like all these leaves, because everything fell off the end, the part that I cut. And because it was right up against the building and we don't want to scratch or like break a window and all that stuff with the wind. So anyway, cut it off. And it fell. And I was like, whoa, that was a lot of, apparently that was a lot of weight on this limb or these like twigs and branches out here in this strong limb. Well, that was impressive. Okay. And so I thought, all right, there's a little bit more. I'm going to cut this one little more piece and it won't do that again. Surely it won't go that much. Cut that sucker off. That branch went whoop. That ladder went boom. So me and the saw went, yeah. So I will never forget that, of course, but the takeaway was this. Those big, giant, incredible oak trees are so strong and incredible. None of us, when we go to do our cookout underneath there, our Shavuot, none of us look at that tree. None of us go out there to sit when groups and youth groups sit out there and we play music out there. None of us go underneath that big, strong tree and ask, we should take some weight off of these limbs. We never look at that and think, this tree's really weak. Let's lighten the load. We don't. That's not our first instinct, right? We appreciate the strength and the beauty of this thing and how long it's lasted and all that stuff. So cutting those limbs a couple times that we've done that, now I look at that tree and I realize the whole point of the tree is not to lighten the load. The point of the tree is that it could handle so much more, and as it grows and it grows and it grows, it's going to keep going. And if that building wasn't there or our saw wasn't there or whatever, it would keep growing. And it would grow all the way towards the ground and it would just keep on expanding. The tree can grow a lot bigger and it's a lot stronger than what we think it is. You and me are a lot stronger and a lot more capable than we really expect of ourselves. You can handle more, you can do more. You just might not know how the chapter is going to end or what the next chapter is going to be. So if you don't know, if you're in the middle of that chapter right now and you're asking those questions and you're questioning and you're concerned, or you're concerned about somebody else's and you're pointing the finger at them, they can probably do more than you think they can, and you can probably do more. And I'm 100% confident that God knows that about each one of us and that He's wired us and He's paved the way for us to do that. We just haven't gotten there yet for whatever situation you're in. That word rescued, maybe there's not a D on the end of your word right now or your prayer. Then again, we sang, and I wanted to sing this again actually. Can you put up that slide of chains are broken, that chorus? Will you come up and get your song ready? So Christian's going to sing a song in just a second. Can we Can we a cappella sing this real quick? And I ask you that, not because whatever. A cappella means no instruments. I'm not asking for a big production. This is the point. I said maybe your word right now is not rescued. Maybe your D is not on it yet. Second thing, I know everybody in here has a relationship with God. And I know everybody in here can see that God loves them and knows the future of where you're headed and what chapter you're headed to. But I'm not 100% sure that for all of us that feels like the chains are gone yet. Because there might be something holding us back. There might be a big question mark. There might be just a little bit or a whole ton of fear about what you're getting into. So in a second, Kristen was going to sing a song, and that's on the flip side of your sheet. And you don't have to sing along with that. I just wanted you to have the words in front of you, and she wanted to have the words for you so we could worship that way. But can we sing as a group this chorus real quick?
Yeah. Do you want to put the lights off and stand and all that? Or maybe my chains are gone. I've been set free. My God, my Savior, has ransomed me. And like a flood, His mercy reigns, unending love, amazing grace.
Father, as we listen to the words of this song and we think about your scriptures, sometimes I question why we come here. And we said last week when Walt was talking, it's because scripture will smack us in the face. That's why we come here. So would you please take the reality of prayer and of worship songs and of scripture tonight? Would you use it to boost us? Would you use it to answer questions? Would you use it to make us lean on other people and grab a shoulder to pray with somebody that we know is struggling through a chapter? Would you use it to release us from maybe a chapter that's haunting us still? Would you use it to build confidence in your future, just like the promised land, just like the daughters of Zelophehad? A word I didn't even know how to pronounce before this, but a word that I'm realizing they had a confidence in the future because you had laid it out for them. Thank you for people that have gone before us who had a beautiful faith. And they've remained faithful to you. Help us to do that as we listen to these words and worship you.